The 44-year-old janitor had never thrown a punch in a real fight. But in 90 seconds, he'd make a decorated black belt question everything he knew about martial arts. It was 9:47 p.m. on a Wednesday at Dragon's Den Martial Arts in Seattle's Ballard neighborhood. Michael Sullivan was doing what he'd done every night for 6 years, mopping the sweat-stained mats, while his 10-year-old daughter Sophia finished her homework at the front desk. The gym was supposed to be empty. The last class had ended 30 minutes ago. But tonight, Brandon Cole, the gym's newest Muay Thai instructor, 24 years old, state champion, 62,000 Instagram followers, had stayed late to film content. And when Brandon saw the quiet janitor pushing a mop bucket across the octagon mat, something in him saw an opportunity. "Yo, janitor man," Brandon called out, phone already recording. "You ever actually step on these mats, or you just clean them?" Mikey didn't look up. He'd heard variations of this question before. He smiled politely, kept mopping. But Sophia, sitting 30 feet away with her math homework and a spiral notebook covered in hand-drawn stick figures throwing kicks, looked up. She'd seen that smile on her dad's face before. It was the smile that meant, "Please don't make me do this." What Brandon Cole didn't know, what nobody in that gym knew, was that Michael Sullivan had spent over 3,000 hours teaching himself to fight. 4 nights a week after his daughter fell asleep, alone with the heavy bags, the mannequins, the CCTV footage from the day's classes, and a YouTube algorithm that had learned to recommend combat breakdowns at 2 a.m. The question wasn't whether Mikey could fight. The question was, what would happen when everyone found out he'd been learning in the shadows all along? 8 years earlier, Michael Sullivan's wife walked out of their studio apartment in South Seattle with a single rolling suitcase and a sentence that would echo in his head every night since. Every single night. When he couldn't sleep, when he was mopping floors at 1 a.m., when he watched his daughter draw pictures of stick figures fighting and wondered if she'd ever see him as anything more than the man who cleaned up after other people. "You're a dreamer with no follow-through, Michael," Jennifer had said, standing in the doorway with her hand on the suitcase handle. "You always talk about someday. You talk about learning martial arts someday, getting a better job someday, being somebody someday. Well, someday never comes for people like you. It just doesn't. And I can't wait around anymore." Sophia was 6 months old, too young to remember, too young to know that her mother had looked at her exactly once before leaving, and then turned away. Jennifer didn't ask for custody, didn't leave a forwarding address, didn't call, didn't send money, just gone. Mikey had been working overnight shifts at a warehouse in Tukwila at the time, $10 an hour plus overtime, trying to save money for, what was it that week, martial arts classes. That's what he'd been talking about. He'd been talking about it for 3 years, ever since he'd watched a UFC fight at a sports bar and felt something stir in him, something old, something from when he was a kid, watching Bruce Lee movies with his dad on VHS tapes, back before the old man died of a heart attack when Mikey was 14. He'd always wanted to learn, to train, to know what it felt like to move with purpose, with power, with the kind of confidence that came from knowing you could protect yourself, protect the people you loved. But between rent, my 310 for 450 square feet, and diapers, $40 a week, and Jennifer's student loan payments, $280 a month for a degree she never finished, and groceries and utilities, and the fact that his car needed new brakes, and the baby needed a doctor's appointment, and there was never enough, so he talked about it instead. Someday, when things get better, when I have time, when I have money. When? Jennifer was right about one thing. He'd been all talk, but she never saw what happened after she left. She never saw the next chapter. Because that's the thing about someday. It doesn't arrive on its own. You have to drag it into today. And you have to do it when no one's watching, when no one believes in you, when no one's keeping score. That's when it counts. 3 weeks after Jennifer left, Mikey lost the apartment. Couldn't pay rent on one income. The landlord gave him 2 weeks to clear out. He packed everything they owned into 8 cardboard boxes and the trunk of his 2007 Honda Civic. The car had 187,000 miles on it and a check engine light that had been on for 2 years. The back seat smelled like old French fries and baby wipes. That car became their home. For 2 months, Mikey and 6-month-old Sophia lived in that Civic. He'd park in different spots every night to avoid getting ticketed or hassled by cops. Monday nights, the QFC parking lot on 15th Ave. Tuesday nights, the 24-hour Safeway in Greenwood. Wednesday nights, a residential street in Fremont where nobody seemed to care. Thursday through Sunday, gym parking lots. Gym parking lots were the safest. They were open 24 hours, well lit, security cameras. Nobody bothered you. And Mikey liked watching people come and go. He liked seeing them walk in tired and walk out stronger. He liked imagining what it felt like to have a place to go, a place where you belonged. He'd change Sophia's diaper in the back seat, the dome light flickering, his hands shaking from exhaustion. He'd feed her formula that he heated with hot water from gas station bathrooms. He'd rock her to sleep at 11 p.m., then sit in the driver's seat and stare through the windshield at the gym entrance and wonder how people afforded this. Memberships, trainers, gear, time. He wasn't bitter. He was just tired and confused. Because he'd done everything right, hadn't he? Worked hard, showed up, paid his bills, loved his wife, tried to be a good dad, and he'd still ended up here, homeless, 36 years old, sleeping in a car with a baby who deserved better. One night in late September, he remembered it was late September because the rain had just started. That Seattle rain that doesn't stop until April. He parked outside Dragon's Den Martial Arts in Ballard. It was 11 p.m. The lights were still on inside. He could see through the big front windows. A man was inside, sweeping the mats. Older guy, Asian, maybe Japanese. Late 50s, early 60s. Moving with the kind of ease that comes from doing the same thing 10,000 times. Mikey watched him for 20 minutes, watched him sweep, lock the equipment cage, wipe down the mirrors, turn off the lights one by one. Then the man walked outside and locked the front door. Mikey got out of the car. He didn't know why. He just did. Some impulse, some last thread of hope that hadn't broken yet. "Excuse me," Mikey called out. The man turned, didn't smile, didn't frown, just waited. Patient. Like he'd seen this before. "I'm sorry to bother you," Mikey said. His voice sounded strange. He realized he hadn't spoken to another adult in 3 days. "I was wondering if you needed help. Cleaning, maintenance, anything. I can work nights. I just need—" He stopped. Didn't know how to finish that sentence. What did he need? Money? A place to stay? A reason to keep going? The man looked past Mikey to the Honda Civic. The back seat was visible from where they stood. Sophia was asleep in her car seat, covered with a thin blanket. A box of diapers sat on the floor, a bag of clothes, a stuffed elephant. "You got a kid," the man said. Not a question, a statement. "Yes, sir." "She safe in that car?" Mikey's throat tightened. "For now." The man studied him. Really studied him. Not judging, just looking. Seeing. Then he stepped aside and unlocked the door again. "Name's Ray Nakamura. I own this place." He pushed the door open. "You show up. You got a place here." That was it. No interview. No questions about references or experience or why a grown man with a baby was living in his car. Just, "You show up. You got a place here." Mikey showed up. The next night, and the night after that, and the night after that, every night. 6 p.m. to 2 a.m. He mopped the mats, sanitized the equipment, restocked towels in the locker rooms, fixed broken speed bags, cleaned toilets, hauled trash, wiped mirrors. Ray paid him in cash at first, $32 a night. Enough for a motel room twice a week, and gas and diapers and formula. After a month, Ray helped him find a studio apartment 3 blocks away on Leary Avenue, signed as a reference, covered the security deposit out of his own pocket, told Mikey he could pay it back over time. Mikey paid it back in 3 months. He never forgot what Ray did. And Ray never mentioned it, never held it over him, never asked for gratitude, just treated him like a man who worked there, like someone who belonged. But Mikey also never forgot Jennifer's words, dreamer with no follow-through. Those words lived in his head like a second voice, quieter than his own thoughts, but always there, in the background, whispering, especially late at night, especially when he was tired, especially when things were hard. You'll never be anything. You talk. You don't do. Someday never comes for people like you. So Mikey made a promise to himself, a quiet one, the kind you don't say out loud because saying it makes it easier to break, the kind you keep in your chest, locked away, where nobody can mock it or doubt it or take it from you. He would become someone. Not for Jennifer. She was gone. Didn't matter anymore. Not even for Sophia, not really. She was too young to remember this time. Too young to know what rock bottom looked like. And that was good. He wanted it that way. No. This promise was for himself, to prove that follow-through was possible, that someday could become today, that you could change without permission, without an audience, without anyone believing in you first. He would learn to fight, not in a class, not with a coach. He couldn't afford that. But he'd learn. Somehow. The first night Mikey stayed late, it was an accident. He'd finished mopping around 1 a.m. and went to Ray's office to grab his jacket. The door was open. The lights were off. But the CCTV monitor was still on, glowing blue in the dark. The screen showed a recording from earlier that evening, the 7 p.m. Muay Thai class. Kru Somchai, a stocky Thai man with scarred shins and hands like leather, was demonstrating a basic 1-2 combination to a group of beginners. Jab, cross, step, reset. Mikey stopped in the doorway, watched. Just for a minute. Kru Somchai moved with a kind of efficiency that Mikey had never seen before. No wasted motion. Every movement had a purpose. The jab snapped out and back like a piston. The cross rotated from the hips, the back foot pivoting, the whole body behind it. Mikey watched the sequence 3 times, rewound it, watched it again. Then he stood up, walked into the empty gym. The mats were still damp from his mop. The lights were half off. The air smelled like disinfectant and old sweat. He tried the combination. Slow, awkward. His feet didn't pivot. His hips didn't turn. His hands felt heavy. Wrong. But it felt like something. The next night, he finished cleaning by midnight and went back to the office, pulled up the recording, watched the same class, tried the combination again. Better this time. His feet moved a little. His hips turned. Just barely. By the end of the first week, he had a routine. Clean until midnight. Review the CCTV footage. Pick one technique. Drill it on the heavy bag for 30 minutes. Go home. Sleep 3 hours. Wake up. Drop Sophia at daycare. Come home. Sleep 2 more hours. Pick her up. Make dinner. Then the drawings started. It was a Tuesday night. Sophia was 2 years old, just starting to scribble with crayons. Mikey was exhausted. He'd been up for 19 hours. His body ached. He sat on the floor of their studio apartment, barely able to keep his eyes open, and Sophia handed him a piece of paper. Draw, Daddy. He didn't know what to draw. His brain was mush. So he drew a stick figure. Just a little man. And then, without thinking, he drew the stick figure throwing a punch, a jab, the technique he'd been drilling that week. Sophia loved it. clapped her hands. More. So he drew another. A cross, then a kick, then a block. She copied them in her own notebook. Crooked lines, dots for heads. She was 2. But she was watching him, learning. And Mikey realized something. If he drew the techniques, he could study them during the day. While Sophia napped, while she played, he could draw them from memory and figure out what he'd done wrong, what needed to change. The notebook became his textbook. Every night, he'd draw a new technique, label it, notes in the margins. Turn hip more. Keep hands up. Watch elbow. Sophia would copy the drawings in her own book, asking what each one was called. This one's a jab, baby. See? You step and push your hand out like you're reaching for something far away. Like this? Just like that. She didn't know what he was doing. She thought it was a game. Thought her dad just liked drawing little fighting men. She didn't know he was teaching himself. Teaching them both. Years passed. The routine became automatic, invisible. Mikey was the night janitor at Dragon's Den. That's all anyone saw. The quiet guy in the gray work shirt with Mikey stitched over the pocket who mopped the mats and took out the trash and fixed the speed bags when they broke and never complained and never asked for anything and was just there. Part of the furniture, part of the building. The invisible man. Nobody knew he stayed late 4 nights a week. Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. Those were his training nights. He'd finish cleaning by midnight, then lock the doors, turn off half the lights to save Ray money on the electric bill, and train until 2 a.m., sometimes 2:30 if he was working on something specific. Then he'd walk the 3 blocks home, shower quietly so he wouldn't wake Sophia, sleep for 3 hours, wake up at 6 a.m., make breakfast, drop Sophia at school, come home, sleep for 2 more hours, pick her up at 3 p.m., make dinner, help with homework, draw techniques in the notebook, put her to bed at 8:30, and start again. The same loop, week after week, month after month, year after year. Nobody knew he watched the CCTV footage like a PhD student studying primary sources. He'd sit in Ray's office with the door cracked, the volume low, and watch the day's classes on the monitor. He had a system. He'd watch each class twice. First time, just observe. Take mental notes. Second time, pause. Rewind. Slow down the critical moments. How did the instructor set up that combination? What did the student do wrong? How did the correction change the movement? He took notes in a composition notebook he kept hidden in his locker. Not technique notes. He couldn't risk someone finding it and asking questions. Just cryptic reminders. Crew S, elbow entry, Tuesday 7 p.m., watch hip rotation. Coach Davis, wrestling shoot, footwork at 32 men or $9 mark. Emma's counter to jab, head movement offline, not back. The notebook filled up. He started a second one, then a third. Nobody knew he'd created a YouTube account under a fake name, Seattle Student 47, specifically for martial arts content. The algorithm learned fast. Within 2 months, his homepage was nothing but technique breakdowns, fight analysis, training montages, and instructional videos from coaches all over the world. He watched over 4,000 videos in 6 years. Everything. Beginner tutorials from community centers in Texas. Championship fight breakdowns from analysts in the Philippines. Biomechanics lectures from sports science channels run by PhDs in Sweden. Sparring footage from amateur gyms in Thailand. He didn't just watch. He studied. He'd watch a video on proper jab mechanics, then immediately go to the heavy bag and drill it 200 times. He'd watch a breakdown of Anderson Silva's counter-striking, then shadow box the same sequences in front of the mirror until his legs burned. He'd watch a tutorial on wrestling entries, then practice the level change motion on the mats until he could drop his hips without thinking. By year 2, he'd moved beyond Muay Thai basics. Boxing became an obsession. He studied Vasyl Lomachenko's footwork, the way the Ukrainian danced around opponents, pivoting on angles that created openings out of nowhere. Mikey would watch Lomachenko fights frame by frame, slowed down to quarter speed, trying to understand the geometry. Then he'd recreate the patterns on the octagon mat, placing pieces of tape as markers, drilling the pivot sequences until his ankles ached. Wrestling. He couldn't drill wrestling properly without a partner, but he could learn the entries, the level changes, the grip fighting. He watched hours of NCAA championship matches, pausing on the setups, watching how elite wrestlers disguised their shots, how they chained attacks together. Jiu-jitsu. There was a channel run by a black belt in Sao Paulo named Professor Ricardo, who posted free technique videos every week. Guard passes, submissions, escapes. Mikey watched all of them. He couldn't practice most of them. You needed a partner on the ground. But he memorized the positions, the grips, the leverage points, just in case. And he watched fights, hundreds of fights. Demetrius Johnson became a particular fascination. How could someone 5'3" and 125 pounds dominate opponents who were bigger, stronger, younger? Mikey watched every Johnson fight he could find, trying to decode it. Speed, sure, but also timing, distance management, the ability to make people miss by centimeters and counter in the same breath. Mikey wasn't fast. He wasn't young, but he could learn to make people miss. He could learn timing. By year 3, his body had changed. Not dramatically. He wasn't bulky. He didn't lift weights. He couldn't afford a gym membership and didn't have time anyway. But his frame had shifted in small ways. His shoulders were broader from thousands of hooks on the heavy bag. His forearms were thicker from gripping the bag during clinch work. His hands were harder, calloused across the knuckles and the base of his palms. His knuckles were always slightly swollen, not injured, just conditioned from impact. He moved differently, too. It wasn't something he noticed at first, but other people did. The way he walked changed. Longer stride, weight distributed evenly, no wasted motion. The way he turned to pick up Sophia's backpack. His whole body turned, hips first, shoulders following. Balanced. The way he stepped around furniture. He didn't shuffle. He pivoted. Small steps. Light on his feet. The way he stood in line at the grocery store. Weight on the balls of his feet. Hands loose. Eyes scanning. Ready. Sophia noticed first. She was 7 then. Smart. Observant in the way kids are when they study the one person who matters most. They were walking home from the park on a Saturday afternoon. Sophia was holding his hand, chattering about something. A friend at school, a game they'd played at recess. And then she stopped mid-sentence and looked up at him. "Daddy, you stand different than other dads." Mikey looked down. "What do you mean, sweetheart?" She tilted her head, studying him. "I don't know. Like when we're waiting for the bus, you stand different. Your feet are wide, and your hands." She trailed off, trying to find the words. "My hands what? They're always kind of up. Not up, just ready." Mikey felt something tighten in his chest. "Ready for what?" She shrugged. "I don't know. Just ready. Like you're waiting for something to happen." He didn't know what to say, so he smiled and squeezed her hand. "I just want to make sure we're safe, that's all." She accepted that answer. Went back to talking about her friend. But that night, after Sophia was asleep, Mikey stood in front of the bathroom mirror and looked at himself. Really looked. Sophia was right. His posture had changed. Even standing still, his weight was on the balls of his feet. His hands hung at his sides, but loosely, ready to move. His shoulders were back, but not tense. His chin was slightly tucked. Fighter's posture. He'd been training so long that it had become his default. He didn't stand like a janitor anymore. He stood like someone who'd drilled 10,000 hours, and that scared him, Because if a 7-year-old could notice, who else could? What if Ray noticed? What if one of the instructors noticed? What if they asked questions? Mikey made a conscious effort after that to slouch more, to shuffle when he walked, to keep his hands in his pockets, to look down instead of scanning rooms. He tried to be invisible again, but it was hard, because the body remembers. And once you've trained it to move a certain way, it doesn't forget. By year 4, Mikey had developed a problem. He was running out of things to learn alone. He could drill techniques, he could study footage, he could hit bags and shadow box and work mannequins, but he couldn't spar, couldn't test himself against resistance, couldn't know if anything he'd learned would actually work against a real person. So he started watching the sparring sessions at Dragon's Den more carefully. He'd mop slowly near the octagon mat when the competition team was training, watch how they moved, how they set up combinations, how they reacted under pressure. He started noticing patterns, tells. The way a fighter's shoulder would dip before a right hand, the way their weight would shift before a kick, the way their eyes would flicker toward a target half a second before committing. He started predicting their moves, in his head, like a game. Watch a fighter set up, guess what they'd throw. See if he was right. He was right more often than not. By year 5, Mikey had trained more hours than most amateur fighters, by his count. And he kept a journal, hidden in his work locker, with dates and times and techniques drilled. He'd logged over 2,500 hours, watching, drilling, studying, shadow boxing, hitting bags. But he'd never hit a person. He'd never been hit by a person. And that scared him. Because all of this, all these hours, all this studying, all this work, what if it was just an elaborate fantasy? What if he was just a janitor who'd convinced himself he could fight because he'd watched enough YouTube videos and hit enough bags? What if Jennifer was right? What if he really was just a dreamer? By year 6, Mikey had stopped asking himself those questions. He'd stopped caring whether he was good or not, whether it was real or not. He trained because he needed to, because it was the only time he felt like himself. Because those hours alone in the gym at 2 a.m., with the city asleep and his daughter safe at home, and nothing but him and the bags and the silence. Those hours were the only time he felt like he'd followed through on something. He'd become disciplined, consistent. Someone who showed up. That had to count for something, even if nobody ever knew. And then came Wednesday night, September 25th. 9:47 p.m. Brandon Cole had been teaching at Dragon's Den for 3 months. He was good, technically sharp, high energy. The students loved him. He had that thing, charisma, confidence, whatever you wanted to call it. He walked into a room and people looked. He'd grown up poor in Tacoma. No dad. Mom worked 2 jobs at a hospital, one as a cafeteria worker, another as a night janitor. Brandon started training at 15, after getting jumped by 3 kids after school. A coach at the gym saw him running wind sprints alone on the track and said, "You've got speed. Come learn how to use it." Brandon trained for free in exchange for cleaning the gym, mopped floors, wiped mirrors, took out trash. It was humiliating at first. He'd see kids his age show up with their parents, with their nice gym bags and expensive gloves, and he'd be in the corner with a mop bucket. But he worked, trained twice a day, competed every chance he got, won most of his fights, got his black belt at 21, won the state championship at 23. Now, at 24, he was being courted by promoters. Going pro was a real possibility. He'd earned everything he had, fought for it. Literally. So yeah, maybe he had an ego, but he'd earned that too. Tonight, Brandon had stayed late to film content. He was building his social media, 62,000 Instagram followers, 180,000 on TikTok. He did a series called Sparring Randos, where he'd invite random people at the gym to light spar and break down their mistakes. Educational, entertaining. His followers ate it up. The problem was, the gym was empty. Last class ended at 9:15. Everyone had gone home, except the janitor. Brandon had seen the guy around for years, but had never really talked to him. Quiet dude, older, always had his head down, always mopping, wiping, fixing. The invisible man. And then Brandon had an idea. It would be funny, right? Wholesome. The janitor, who'd probably never trained a day in his life, steps into the ring for a quick sparring round. Brandon goes super light, teaches him some basics. Everyone has a laugh. Good content. Maybe even inspiring. You're never too old to start training kind of vibe. Brandon pulled out his phone, opened Instagram, started recording. Yo, janitor man, you ever actually step on these mats, or you just clean them? The guy didn't look up, just kept mopping. Brandon walked closer, phone extended, framing the shot. The janitor in his work clothes, the mop bucket, the empty gym. Perfect visual contrast. This was going to make great content. Come on, man, serious question. You work here, what, like 6 years? Maybe more? And you've never once tried training? Never stepped on these mats as anything other than the cleaning guy? Still nothing. The janitor just kept mopping, working his way across the mat in steady strokes. Brandon circled around to get a better angle. I'm genuinely curious. You've seen thousands of classes at this point. Watched people learn. Watched people get better. Watched people compete. Don't you ever wonder what it's like? Don't you ever think, man, I wish that was me? The janitor stopped mopping, looked up. His face was neutral, but his jaw was tight. His knuckles were white on the mop handle. Brandon grinned. Finally. Some engagement. This was the moment. The hook. I mean, I'm not trying to be a dick here, Brandon continued, his voice friendly, reasonable. The camera loved reasonable. But think about it. How many hours have you spent in this gym? 10,000? 20,000? You've probably spent more time here than half the students. But you're still just watching, cleaning, never doing. He paused for effect. Let that sink in. That doesn't bother you, even a little. The janitor set the mop against the wall, slowly, deliberately. His hands were shaking slightly. I'm good, he said. His voice was quiet, polite, the kind of voice that apologized for existing. Thanks for the offer. Brandon should have stopped there. He knew it even as the words were coming out. But the camera was rolling. The shot was perfect. And something about this man's quietness, his politeness, his invisibility, it bothered Brandon, reminded him of his mom, always apologizing, always invisible, always cleaning up after people who didn't see her as human. Why are you okay with that? Brandon thought. Why don't you want more? Tell you what, Brandon said, raising his voice so it carried across the gym. 1 round, 2 minutes, light sparring, super light. I'll teach you some basics, show you what you've been watching all these years. It'll be fun, educational. Your daughter can watch. He gestured toward the front desk. The janitor glanced that direction. There was a little girl sitting there, maybe 9 or 10, doing homework. She had headphones on, but she was looking up now, watching. His kid. Brandon felt a small pang of guilt. You don't mess with a guy in front of his kid. That's a line. But he wasn't messing with him. He was offering to teach him. That was different. That was generous even. How many state champions would offer to spar with a random janitor? Come on, Brandon pressed, smiling into the camera. Your daughter's here. Show her you're not scared to try something new. That's a good lesson, right? Never too late to learn? The little girl took off her headphones. She was staring now. The janitor's jaw tightened further. I'm good, he repeated. Really. I appreciate it. But I need to finish cleaning. And there it was, that apologetic tone again, that deferent head down, please don't see me tone that Brandon had heard his whole childhood. His mom talking to landlords, his mom talking to bosses, his mom talking to his teachers when they called about him skipping class. Sorry. I'm sorry. I'll do better. Please don't be mad. Something in Brandon snapped. Bet you tell your kid you work at a gym, though, right? The words came out sharper than he intended. Make it sound cooler than it is? Daddy works with fighters. But you're not actually a fighter. You're just the guy who cleans up after them. The janitor's face didn't change, but his hands curled into fists at his sides. The little girl stood up. Slowly, her chair scraped against the floor. Brandon kept going. He didn't know why. Maybe because the camera was rolling and he needed a payoff. Maybe because he'd had a long day and was tired, and this felt easier than going home. Maybe because this quiet man with his mop and his apologetic voice was every frustration Brandon had ever felt about people who settled. People who gave up. People who accepted less. I mean, real talk, Brandon said, addressing the camera now more than the janitor. This man has been in this gym for, 6 years? Probably more. Thousands of hours. He's watched hundreds of fighters train, hundreds of techniques, hundreds of sparring rounds. And he's never once thought, maybe I should try that. Maybe I should be one of them. Or maybe he did think it, but he was too scared, too old, too late. Whatever excuse he told himself to stay comfortable mopping floors. The janitor's hands uncurled, then curled again. His breathing had changed, faster, deeper. The little girl was walking toward them now, clutching something against her chest, a notebook. Brandon noticed but didn't stop. He was in it now, committed. You know what I think? He said, turning back to the janitor. I think you tell yourself you're content, that this is enough, that you don't need more. But deep down, I think you're ashamed. I think you look at yourself in the mirror and wonder when you became invisible, when you became the guy nobody sees. The janitor's jaw was shaking now. Dad. The little girl's voice cut through the gym like a gunshot. Brandon stopped, turned. She was standing 10 feet away, maybe 10 years old, dark hair in a ponytail, eyes red, clutching a blue spiral notebook against her chest like armor. She looked at her dad, then at Brandon, then back at her dad. Dad, she said again. Her voice was shaking, but it was loud enough, clear enough. You don't have to be scared. Her voice cracked. A tear rolled down her cheek. I know you know how. Come on, Brandon pressed. Your daughter's here. Show her. You're not scared to try something new. The janitor shook his head. I'm good. Thanks. His voice was quiet, polite, almost apologetic. And something about that politeness irritated Brandon. Why are you apologizing for existing? Bet you tell your kid you work at a gym, though, right? Brandon said. He was smiling, but there was an edge to it now. Make it sound cooler than it is. Daddy works with fighters. But you're not actually a fighter. You're just the guy who cleans up after them. The janitor's knuckles went white on the mop handle. The little girl took off her headphones, stared at Brandon. Brandon kept going. He didn't know why. Maybe because the camera was rolling. Maybe because he'd had a long day. Maybe because something about this quiet man reminded him of his mom, always apologizing, always invisible, always cleaning up after people who didn't see her. I mean, real talk. You've been here 6 years. Thousands of hours. You've watched hundreds of fighters train. And you've never once thought, maybe I should be one of them. That's kind of sad, man. The janitor didn't move. Or maybe you did think it, Brandon continued. But you were too scared, too old, too late. Whatever excuse you told yourself. The gym was very quiet now. Dad." The little girl's voice cut through the space, small, shaky, but clear. Brandon stopped, turned. She was standing now, clutching a spiral notebook against her chest. She looked at her dad, then at Brandon, then back at her dad. "Dad, you don't have to be scared," her voice cracked. "I know you know how." The janitor stared at his daughter. Brandon frowned. What did she mean? "I know you know how." And then the janitor set the mop down. Slowly, deliberately. His hands were steady now. His posture changed. Feet wider, weight balanced, shoulders loose. Brandon noticed it. Something was different. "All right," the janitor said quietly. "One round." Brandon grinned. "That's what I'm talking about." "Okay, yeah, let's do it." He posted the video to his Instagram story. Sparring the Janitor Challenge, Dragon's Den. Within minutes, 12 people showed up. Students who lived nearby, coaches who were in the parking lot, regulars grabbing food down the street. They gathered around the octagon mat, phones out, filming. This was going to be good. The janitor versus the state champ. Wholesome content. Maybe it'd go viral. Nobody knew they were about to witness something else entirely. Mikey stood at the edge of the mat, hands in his pockets. His work shirt was off now. Plain white undershirt underneath. The kind you buy in a six-pack at Target. His frame was lean, wiry. No gym muscles, just working man strength. Brandon was across from him, bouncing on his toes, already warmed up. He looked like a fighter. Moved like a fighter. Tattoos on his forearms, compression shorts, expensive training shoes. Mikey looked like someone who'd just gotten off a shift at a warehouse. "You sure about this?" Brandon called out. He was smiling, but there was something genuine in his voice. One last out. Mikey nodded. "Okay, 2 minutes. Light contact. If you want to stop, just tap out or say the word." Someone in the crowd yelled, "Yo, somebody time this!" A guy pulled out his phone. 2 minutes. Starting. Now. They stepped toward the center of the mat. Brandon circled left, hands low, loose. He threw a jab, maybe 50% speed, just to see how Mikey would react. Mikey slipped it. Not perfectly. His head movement was stiff, delayed by maybe half a second. But he moved. The jab missed. The crowd made a noise. "Ooh!" Brandon's grin faltered. Just a little. He threw another jab. Faster this time, 60%. Mikey parried it. Forearm block. Textbook. A little slow, but clean. Brandon stopped bouncing. He reset. Circled right. From the office doorway, Ray Nakamura stepped into view. Arms crossed. Watching. Brandon feinted a jab, then threw a low kick. Not hard. Just testing. 50% power. Mikey checked it. Lifted his knee. Shin to shin. The kick hit bone and stopped dead. The crowd went louder. "Yo!" Brandon's smile disappeared. He circled faster now. Threw a jab cross combination. 70% speed. Mikey covered up. High guard. The punches hit his forearms. Clean defense. Brandon threw a hook. It slipped past Mikey's guard, grazed his temple. But didn't land flush. Mikey didn't panic. Didn't back up. Just absorbed it and reset. Someone in the crowd yelled, "Janitor's got hands!" Brandon's face flushed. This wasn't supposed to happen. This was supposed to be funny. Light. A teaching moment. Not whatever this was. He stepped in and threw a harder low kick. 80%. Mikey checked it again. Same technique. The impact echoed through the gym. Brandon winced. His shin throbbed. And then Mikey threw his first real strike. A jab. Not fast, not powerful, but placed, right down the middle. Textbook extension. It caught Brandon on the nose. Not hard. Barely a tap. But it landed. The crowd erupted. "Oh shit!" Brandon blinked. His eyes watered. He touched his nose instinctively. No blood. But it stung. He looked at Mikey. Mikey's face was calm. Focused. Not smiling, not angry, just present. Brandon's smile was gone now. "All right," he muttered. "All right." He circled tighter, threw a jab cross hook combo, 85% speed. Mikey blocked the jab and cross, ate the hook on his forearm, bruise forming immediately. But he didn't back down. Brandon threw another low kick, harder. 90%. Mikey checked it. Clean. Brandon reset, breathing harder now. Threw a fake jab, then a hard right hand. Mikey slipped it. Barely. His timing was off, but he moved his head just enough. The punch whiffed past his ear. The crowd gasped. Ray uncrossed his arms. Brandon was fully engaged now. No more light sparring. This was real. He threw a spinning back kick, one of his signature moves, the kind he'd knocked people out with in competition. Mikey saw it coming. He'd watched Brandon's TikTok videos, watched him throw that exact kick in 3 different fights, watched it slowed down, frame by frame, at 2 a.m. in this very gym. He stepped offline. The kick whiffed. Brandon stumbled slightly, off balance for half a second. Mikey didn't hesitate. Low kick. Lead leg. Calf. His form wasn't perfect. Hip didn't fully rotate. But it landed. Clean. Right on the nerve cluster below Brandon's knee. Brandon's leg buckled. He caught himself, but his stance was compromised. The crowd was yelling now, not laughing, yelling. Mikey moved forward, not fast, not explosive, but methodical, like someone who drilled a sequence 1,000 times in an empty gym. He threw a second low kick, same leg, same spot. Brandon tried to check it, but his balance was off. The kick landed flush. His knee wobbled. "Holy shit," someone in the crowd whispered. Brandon reset, frustrated, angry now. He threw a wild overhand right, trying to end it. Mikey ducked. Too deep, almost off balance. But he ducked. And because he was low, stumbling forward, he crashed into Brandon's chest. Accidental clinch. But Mikey's hands, his muscle memory from 3,000 hours, knew what to do. He wrapped his arms around Brandon's neck. Not perfect. Too high. Too tight. But enough. And he threw an elbow. Short. Compact. Close range. It grazed Brandon's temple. Barely touched. But it was enough. Brandon shoved out of the clinch, eyes wide. He touched his eyebrow. Blood. Not much. Just a small cut. Surface level. But blood. The crowd saw it. "Yo, stop! Stop the fight!" But Brandon didn't stop. He was furious. Embarrassed. This wasn't supposed to happen. He charged. Wild hooks. No technique. Just anger. Mikey backed up, covering his head, eating punches on his forearms. He hit the cage wall. Brandon threw 4, 5, 6 body shots. Hard ones. Mikey covered up, elbows tight to his ribs, taking damage. The crowd thought it was over. But then Brandon made a mistake. He dropped his hands. Just for 1 second. To reset. To breathe. And Mikey saw it. He'd seen this exact moment in a YouTube breakdown titled, "Finishing Under Pressure, Liver Shot Setups." Watched it at 2 a.m. 4 months ago. Rewound it 12 times. Drilled the counter on the heavy bag until his knuckles bled. Short left hook. Compact. No windup. Targeting the liver. Right side of the body. Just below the ribs. Soft tissue. Mikey threw it. The hook sank in. Perfect placement. Brandon froze. His face went pale. His body locked up. Liver shots don't hurt immediately. They short-circuit your nervous system. They disable you. Brandon's hands dropped. Mikey didn't follow with another punch. He didn't need to. He threw a low kick instead. Same leg, same spot. Harder this time. Brandon's knee buckled completely. He dropped. Not knocked out. Not unconscious. Just done. On one knee, holding his side, gasping. Mikey stepped back, hands dropped, breathing hard, sweating, but standing. The gym was silent. 15 people. Phone still recording. Nobody moving. Nobody speaking. And then Ray Nakamura walked into the octagon, slowly. He stood between Mikey and Brandon, looked at Mikey, really looked at him. And then Ray nodded. Once. That's 3,000 hours right there, Ray said. Quiet. But in the silence, everyone heard. The crowd erupted. Not cheers. Shock. Holy shit. Did that just happen? Who is this guy? At the front desk, Sophia dropped her notebook. Her hands flew to her mouth. Tears streamed down her face. Not sad tears. Proud tears. Mikey walked over to Brandon, who was still on one knee, catching his breath, holding his ribs. He extended his hand. Brandon stared at it. Then at Mikey. His face was a mix of confusion, humiliation, disbelief, and something else. Respect. He took Mikey's hand. Mikey pulled him up. Where? Brandon started. Stopped. Didn't know what to ask. How did you learn that? YouTube, Mikey said. And 6 years. Brandon stared. You're serious? Yeah, Brandon laughed. Not a happy laugh. A bitter, shocked, disbelieving laugh. He shook his head, looked around at the crowd, all filming, all staring. 6 years, he repeated. By yourself? Yeah. Brandon looked at Mikey for a long moment. Then he nodded, limped toward the locker room. The crowd parted. Nobody said anything. What was there to say? Ray walked over to Mikey. Why didn't you ever ask to train? Ray asked. Mikey looked down. Couldn't afford it. That's not the only reason? Mikey hesitated. Didn't think I deserved it. Ray's expression didn't change, but his eyes softened. You've been training, Ray said. Every night. For years. I knew. Mikey looked up, confused. You knew? I gave you the CCTV code 6 years ago. You think I didn't check the footage? I've watched you learn. I've watched you show up. He paused. That's more than most people with a black belt ever do. Mikey's throat tightened. Effective Monday, Ray said. You're training here. Official. No charge. You've earned it. Mikey couldn't speak. His eyes welled up. He nodded. And then Sophia was there. She'd run from the front desk, tears still streaming, and crashed into Mikey's legs, wrapped her arms around him, held on tight. You're a real fighter, Dad, she said, her voice muffled. Mikey knelt down, held her face in his hands. No, baby, he said softly. I'm a real student, and so are you. He reached into her backpack and pulled out the blue spiral notebook, the one covered in stick figure drawings. He flipped to the last page. Blank. He handed her a pen. Draw what you saw tonight. So you remember. Remember what? That you don't need permission to become who you're meant to be. Sophia took the pen, opened to the blank page, started drawing. A crude stick figure, arms raised, standing over another stick figure. She wrote beneath it, Day 1. Brandon posted the video at 11:43 p.m. He didn't post it to mock. He didn't post it for content. He posted it because he couldn't believe what had happened, because people needed to see. The caption, got humbled tonight by the gym janitor. No belt, no coach, just discipline, respect. By 1 a.m., it had 50,000 views. By 6 a.m., 500,000. By noon the next day, 4 million. Comments poured in by the thousands. This is the most real thing I've ever seen on the internet. That's what discipline looks like, not talent. Discipline. The quiet ones are always the most dangerous. I cried watching this, no joke. ESPN picked it up. Sports Illustrated, MMA blogs, Reddit threads, Twitter. Everyone wanted to know. Who was the janitor? Was he a secret champion? Former military? Hidden prodigy? Reporters started calling Dragon's Den. Ray didn't answer. Mikey never gave an interview, never made a statement. He didn't want attention. He just wanted to train. So that's what he did. Monday night, 6 p.m., Mikey walked into Dragon's Den like he had for 6 years. But this time, instead of heading to the supply closet, he walked onto the mats. Ray was teaching the intermediate Muay Thai class. 23 students. They all turned when Mikey entered. Ray waved him over. "Everyone, this is Michael Sullivan. Most of you know him. He's been here longer than most of you. He's training with us now." A few students clapped. Most just stared. Mikey smiled nervously, set his bag down, stepped into the circle. For the first time in 6 years, he wasn't alone. Sophia sat at the front desk, doing homework, but every few minutes, she'd glance up, watch her dad, and smile. Her notebook was open beside her. A new page, a new drawing, stick figures in a circle, learning, training, together. And beneath it, in her uneven handwriting, Day 1. 3 months later, Brandon Cole posted another video. This one showed him and Mikey sparring. Light, technical, friendly. In the caption, Brandon wrote, "Update. I train with Mikey twice a week now. He's teaching me patience. I'm teaching him combinations. We're both better for it. Humility is the best coach you'll ever have." That video got 2 million views. But Mikey never watched it. He didn't need to. Because the thing about becoming someone isn't the recognition. It isn't the views or the comments or the viral moment. It's the follow-through. It's showing up when nobody's watching, when nobody believes in you, when the only person keeping score is you. 3,000 hours. Not in a dojo, not with a coach, just a man, a heavy bag, and a promise he made to himself in the dark. Jennifer had been wrong. Someday does come, but only if you're willing to drag it into today. One rep at a time, one night at a time, one step at a time. And every night, when Sophia asked him to draw with her, Mikey would pull out that old blue notebook and add one more stick figure, one more technique, one more lesson. Not because he was a fighter, but because he was a student. And students never stop learning. Not when someone's teaching them, and not when they're teaching themselves. Because the best lessons, the ones that change you, the ones that last, those are the ones you learn in the silence, when no one's watching, when no one's keeping score, when the only voice that matters is the one inside your head saying, "Keep going. You're not done yet."